Hi, I'm Rob Vanstone, and welcome to the 57th edition of the Rider Rumblings video podcast. Each week, we pick some Rider player numbers that correspond to the number of the podcast. So, number 57 this week, we salute current Rider player, Brendan Labatt, and former teammate of Marshall Hamilton's, number 57, Bob Poley. That's number 24, Marshall Hamilton. That is, what number did you wear when you played university football, Mer?
50, I think.
Oh.
50. Dick Buckus.
We salute Wayne Shaw, number 50.
Yeah.
Like Singletary.
We're very pleased to have Marshall with us. Marshall played for the Rough Riders from 1981 to 1984, wearing number 24, formerly of Yale, formerly of the Regina Rams, and now within...
You forgot the Regina Silver Foxes, too.
Were you part of that Silver Foxes team?
I got an assist on the goal that the Silver Foxes scored to win one game that entire year. I think we lost 57 out of 58 games or something like that. And Brent Lewis got a goal in overtime against the Moose Jaw Canucks they were at that time. And
no way.
Yeah, I was an infamous Regina Silver Fox. And now I is a Silver Fox.
You really are. You probably weren't very silver back then. But
no, I was jet black back then.
My goodness.
You're well tanned. You look like you're taking advantage of the retirement.
Well, I live in Mesa in the winter and Saskatchewan Beach in the summer, and I'm retired.
That's true.
I'm in the sun all the time.
And Rob and I, we live in Regina and we work in the office, and we're as white as two guys can be.
Yeah, it's we've got this glow in the middle of us, so we've a rare bit of bronze.
It's like a reverse podcast. Oreo cookie, right? With the dark in the middle.
Murray and I have had too many Oreo cookies too, so. Yeah. Myriad issues to discuss with the Rough Riders, obviously. There's Gainergate, and I believe the Rough Riders beat the Toronto Argonauts 32-7 on Monday.
So the new Gainers 1-0.
And the old Gainer missed the playoffs the first 11 years of his existence.
Yes.
So everybody's talking about Gainer. You talked about it on the Rod Peterson show yesterday, and Marshall is also on In the Huddle. He's a media baron these days. What are your thoughts on this Gainer scandal, for lack of a better word?
Well, as you know, Rod did a Twitter poll. I think he does one every week, or every show he does one. And that one was thumbs up or thumbs down on the new Gainer. And, not surprisingly, and what I said on his show was, I mean, none of us should be surprised that the majority of people thought it was a thumbs down. And it's because we have as human beings, a natural resistance to change. And that was a pretty significant change, and a significant change to somebody that, everybody loved. I think everybody loved, and sort of like an icon in our province. So, but what I said on Rod's show was, don't do the poll. I mean, you can do the poll now. It's predictable. It's going to be 80-20 that, thumbs down. But I said, do the poll at the end of the year again, or maybe at the end of next year, and give the new Gainer, the new svelte Gainer, the opportunity to exercise the flexibility that, a slimmer body and a slimmer suit is going to give him. I likened it to sort of two of my favorite mascots over the years. I don't even know if the San Diego Chicken's still around, but the San Diego Chicken, I remember when he came to Regina back when I was playing, and he did this little rendition to the song Whip It Good, and he had a little fake dummy referee, and he was throwing this referee around. I think Gainer's since done something similar to that, but San Diego Chicken was the first one to do that. And I was sitting on the sidelines. I was about 20 feet away from this San Diego Chicken, and I'm just trying my hardest not to laugh because the whole audience is going crazy. And I look over next to me, and about 5 or 6 feet away from me is Joe Faragelli, the head coach, and he's so I figured, I guess it's okay to laugh at this. So I laughed along with it. But the kind of things he was doing, Gainer couldn't do, in this big bulky thing with a great big head. I also think of the Oregon Duck mascot who, the Oregon Ducks score a touchdown, and the Oregon Duck mascot gets down and does 7 push-ups, and then they score another touchdown, and now he's got to do 14 push-ups, and the whole crowd's counting. Well, the Oregon Ducks tend to score a lot of points, so when they're in the 30s, 40s, 50s, that's a lot of push-ups to be doing in a big fat Gainer outfit. So I don't know what the new Gainer's going to do, but I'm pretty sure we're going to see him wanting to be doing jumps and flips and, the kind of things that you see these young, agile mascots do. And it's pretty hard to do in a big old gainer uniform. My advice, though, what I said to the screen, not that Craig Reynolds is watching, but when I did in the huddle, I said, if you want to tweak something, do something about the eyes, because everybody's thinking he's on meth. The rest of them I'm fine with, but maybe go back to something that looks more like the old gainer's eyes.
Yeah, it's not an especially welcoming appearance the way it is right now. It's like,
yeah, he's got that grin on his face and those eyes, and I don't know if they're bloodshot, but I wouldn't be surprised if they are. But let's give the new gainer an opportunity to show us what he can do.
Murray, what are your thoughts on this?
Well, a lot of people
we're trying to change your appearance too, but it just isn't working.
Having lost a little bit, sometimes your face changes when you lose weight. That's the thing that happens. We'll have to find that out again.
Really?
And you can lose weight on meth too.
Yeah,
apparently.
Apparently, yeah. I find it interesting. A lot of people are saying the kids are scared, and I don't know if you remember. When my kids were young, they were scared of Gainer. Gainer wasn't a guy you went up and hugged and said, "Oh, good things," because Gainer's a great big thing. And once you get to know him, you get.
Well, lots of kids are scared of Santa Claus.
I know, and they're scared of the dinosaur at the Western History Museum. It's just one of those things. So, Mega Munch. So I don't quite get why they're scared of Gainer. It takes a little bit of time. I thought the running shoes were cool. I think it's an idea that it is a better, younger, fitter generation. Why is our gopher running around with a big junk in the trunk and a big gut? Maybe upgrade that. I kind of like the video introduced him. Gainer working out was pretty cool. Yeah. I think the eyes could do a little bit of tweaking, but I think the same thing. I'm with you. Give him a chance. Let's see what he can do. Let's see, because they introduced not only Gainer, they introduced some new game day products at the game too, and they use the video storyboard much better than they have in the past. So.
And some of the bloopers, I wasn't at this game because I was in a pickleball tournament, but the bloopers, everybody loves those.
People love bloopers, and they can show them over and over again. So they've kind of taken a page out of some of the other teams. Calgary Stampeders do the blooper runs too, and that's a big hit too. So maybe give them a chance, but we know in Saskatchewan there's no chances. You get your first chance and then you're done. So maybe, and I hate to say it, but I'm tired of Gainer already. But
I had virtually forgotten that there was a Gainer in terms of visibility, in terms of presence. He's been de-emphasized so much over the years as far as the game day program. There's a video board now. There's somebody screaming into a microphone. There's all sorts of things that didn't exist in 1977 when Gainer was born, and the only diversion from the play was Herb Jeffries, the Taxi Squad, playing songs on the sidelines during interludes in the game. So much as, and there was a player cigarette logo on the scoreboard. I mean, it was a pretty basic, primitive existence when Gainer was born one July day in 1977 when the Riders lost 34-14 to BC. But now there's just so much that's part of the game day program. You don't really even, I didn't really even notice Gainer for the longest time. And then suddenly it's like, okay, he or she, we still haven't confirmed the gender, have we? Does matter to people. I'd forgotten he or she was there.
Well, the turning point, if we all go back, and you've sort of hinted at it without saying it out loud, is the turning point is the Jumbotron. As soon as the Jumbotron gets there, now you've got this new form of entertainment. You can show replays, you can show videos, you can do interviews, you can do games and different things like that. And you go to a game now at Mosaic Stadium, and that's every break is turn to the Jumbotron and watch, there's a picture there's the kiss cam, there's the dance cam, there's the people with, artificial mustaches and hats on. There's always something on the Jumbotron, and that used to be Gainer time. That used to be the time where Gainer would walk on the field with a fake dummy, or he'd come out and, jump on a tiger, or he'd come out with his signs and go, Riders, defense, or different things like that. Those timeouts were for Gainer, and that's where Gainer got a chance to be lovable to his fan base. Well, now he doesn't have that opportunity because the Jumbotron's taken over.
And there was a time too when, I don't want to risk deriding the Rough Riders that existed when you played, but there were 11 years when the Riders didn't miss the playoffs. There were some years that team was absolutely dismal. There were a couple of 2-14 seasons for which Marshall wasn't responsible because he debuted with the 9-7 Rough Riders of 1981. So it's the second quarter. The Riders are already out of the game if Edmonton's in town.
Yep.
And you need something to entertain you. And Gaynor filled that void marvelously.
Yeah.
He also was great in the community, too, though. It was not, but that was a big part. You ever saw Gaynor anywhere with their kids around? He was, people, and as I said, they were scared of him, but he was still, even for adults. I remember he showed up at a Briar once, and there was a very acerbic columnist named Paul Wiesek. And I've never seen Paul look that emotional. Gaynor was his absolute favorite mascot. And Gaynor gave him a big hug. And this grown man was almost in tears after.
Paul Wiesek?
Yeah, it was just so. And
wow.
I didn't take his picture. He said, take my picture. And I didn't get his picture taken. So Paul's never quite forgiven me for that. Would have been nice and blurry, I guess. But
Blurry Murray.
Blurry Murray. But anyway.
But the Riders, the thing is, though, it's one thing to espouse patience. And there's certainly a case for what you're advancing. But did the Rough Riders run the risk of allowing this to overshadow the fact that Calgary's in town on Saturday? Did they run the risk of people booing their mascot? Not that I'm calling for people to do that, but the discontent is such that if Gaynor comes out in the same garb, are people going to still be upset? Are people still... And I don't know what proportion of the fan base is upset, but it's a reasonable chunk of it. Could this detract from the game, and is that healthy if it does?
I think they should address it. At least explain what their thinking is. Explain, though, the things that we're speculating on about fitness and why he's got those wacky eyes and that crazy smile. But I think they, as a community-owned team, you make a change like this, maybe come out and explain what your thoughts are, and then it's could be done. As in you've been human reserve, so
you've been there.
You've been in. It's not a crisis mode, but it's crisis management. Isn't it the best way to get out there and just handle it?
Get in front of it?
Yeah, there's sort of two schools of thought there. The first is, I agree with that. I think there's an expression one of my coworkers used to use for many, many years that I've borrowed many times, and that is people can take a lot of what if you give them enough why. Why did you change this? Yeah. Well, here's why we changed it. So I think if they got out front of it, there'd be less people talking about it. But the other, and I'm somewhat taking the other side of the argument for a minute here, is there's an old adage that any press is good press. You know, if they're talking about your football team, if they're talking about your mascot, if they're talking about the CFL, then they're not talking about the weather. They're not talking about politics or Trudeau or the economy or whatever. They're talking about the Saskatchewan Roughriders and their mascot. So I don't think there's people saying, "Oh, I'm not going to buy season tickets anymore because of that, freaky looking new gopher." They're saying, I want the old gopher back, So, but they're still talking about the Saskatchewan Roughriders and the product, total product on the field, not just the football team. They're talking about the game day experience.
I think Rob touched on it. Gaynor becoming unimportant to the games, and maybe they've elevated them to that, and they had to do something. Just like their game day product is better. They had to change that game day product. You had this beautiful jumbotron they can utilize. They can use the other one up in the corner. Let's start using those big things and make it more. And one our producer here, Austin Davis, brought it up. It's more like an NBA game now. And I agree. Every moment is filled with noise and something. But I also notice in the fourth quarter, it tends to get back to football. And the people who are there for the game are allowed, if the game's close and not stormed out.
I don't think I'm speaking out of school when I say this, but the Riders brought in, and I know this because my son Levi works as the director of partnerships with the Riders, and he introduced me to the guy at one of his house parties. But they brought in a guy who came from the Raptors, and I'm not talking about Pillow, who came in. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that right. Who came in a couple of years ago, but this guy was responsible for the game day experience for the Toronto Raptors. And in fact, earlier on in his career, he wore the Raptors suit. So he now works for the Rough Riders. So his vantage point is NBA games where you've got an opportunity to use your mascot to do some things. Now, he's probably not going to be dunking basketballs because we're talking about a different sport. But and I'm just saying this hypothetically, if hypothetically they brought out a trampoline at halftime or trampoline between quarters or something like that, and this new Gaynor gets out there and starts going boing, boing, and doing flips and stuff, everybody's going to be going, Gaynor, I love this new Gaynor. Well, you wouldn't see the old Gaynor do that. You just couldn't do it in that sort of the fat suit. But, so that's why I say let's give this the year, and let's give the Riders the opportunity to unveil their new mascot and what all they want him to do. I assume it's a male. And then let's vote at the end of the year.
Well, the problem is after all this Gainer talk, we still haven't yet mentioned that Cody Fajardo threw for 430 yards.
That's the unfortunate part of this.
And the defense had its best game.
People should be raving about this wonderful quarterback that they have and this excitement and this offense that's a tonic after the sheer sludge that people were subjected to last season.
Tucking and chucking.
Cody Fajardo to Kyron Moore for 98 yards. This is a team that threw for 100 yards in the entire West Division semifinal. I mean, finally, they've got a quarterback about whom people can rave, and they haven't had an emerging star quarterback like this since Darian Durant. And we're talking about a golf gopher, and I suppose we're guilty of perpetuating it here, but that's been the tenor of a lot of the discussion subsequent to the Rough Rider game on Monday. Shouldn't this be Fajardo mania, and shouldn't that be the focus this week? And is this Gophergate detracting from what should be a real good news story that people should be eating up?
I think we should go for something different, but I also like to think that Fajardo's is 2 games. And I know it's pretty impressive 2 games, but it's still 2 games, and he hasn't. And I know people say, what about playing Toronto? Does it really count? Well, they all count, because if they had lost, we wouldn't be talking about Gainer. We'd be talking about when Zach Clare's coming back. But I think well,
I don't think so.
Maybe if he ever comes back, that's one of the other. That's probably even more the bigger thing right now. And where Cody Fajardo's playing, what does Craig Dickinson do? It's 6 games, and that first game in August is a long ways away against Hamilton. But what does he do if Zach Collaros is healthy? If Zach Collaros can come back and play? You're a football player. You're older now, and you've obviously got a good life, good quality of life. You probably didn't have too many concussions in your day, if you remember. Maybe once or twice. One?
Or you
6.
6?
6, really?
Then you could count that high. Good. That's a good one. Yeah.
Probably a lot more, but only 6 I can remember. So. But, back to, we are spending too much time talking about Gainer and not enough time about Fajardo. But one of the things that, there's so many things I want to talk about. So Collaros, I remember 3 weeks ago talking about Collaros in the huddle of the Rod Peterson show. I can't remember which. And I looked at the camera and I said, Zach, if you're watching and if you're listening, think about your future. Think about it from your wife's perspective. I don't know if he's got kids. Think about it from your kids' perspective, and think about, where do you want to be when you're 40? Where do you want to be when you're 50? Where do you want to be when you're 60? And right now, it's tempting to think, well, I can come back and I won't have another concussion, or these concussions aren't going to have a long-term effect on me. But they do, and you don't have to look around the league very far, and I won't mention names, and you see people that are having problems when they get to be 40, 50, 60 years old, or that die, or that commit suicide. And, the more we look at that, the more we go, holy mackerel, I think that might be related to some of the concussions he had earlier in his career. Do you want to be sitting at 60 years old, drooling into your chair, or do you want to be out playing pickleball and hiking and mountain biking, the kind of things that I'm doing? And I'd say, Zach, life is too short to risk the rest of your life to try to come back because you don't think you're going to have another concussion. And almost all of us know that the first concussion is the hardest one, but the next one's easier, and the one after that's even easier. And he's had a number of them. And in most football players, they've had some that they don't even count or that they don't want to admit they've had. So if I'm Dave Dickinson, which I'm not, and if Cody Fajardo continues to play well, when Zach Collaros comes back, he's my backup. He's not my starter. I don't know if
do you even dress him?
I don't even know if he'll go for that.
Well, I'd privately have a conversation with him similar to the one I just had on the camera with Zach if he was watching. I'd say, Zach, do you really want to come back? I mean, you're a great guy, and I love you, and I love your attitude, I love your work ethic, but I'm really concerned about your health and your future, and I don't want to bench you, but I'd like you to decide what's best for you and your family. And if you come back, I want to protect you, and I'm going to have you as my backup because, we need to go on. Our future as a football club depends on us having a healthy quarterback for the entire season, not just for 1 or 2 more games or until you have your next concussion. I'd have him as my backup.
Fajardo's also outplayed Zach.
Yeah,
basically, since Zach's never had 2 games. Well, the 1 game against Calgary last year,
and he played well in Montreal.
And played well,
above average. He had 2 above average games last year,
but he's never had 2 games like Fajardo. So you also have, Fajardo's outplaying him. So in the old competition world of football, who do you go with? You go with a guy. But I don't think Zach would accept the backup role. I think he's a starter in his mind. Just a question. What happens if he's 40, 50, and 60 and he has regrets about not playing? Like, what does he do with that kind of stuff? I know it's talked about his health, but maybe he's fine. And he goes, I wish I'd played for another 5 or 6 years. And
you have to drag a lot of athletes off the field. Very few end their careers of their own.
99%, and this is my statistics, not statistics I've read somewhere, but 99% of athletes leave on somebody else's terms. They don't leave on their own terms. I mean, how many people like Wayne Gretzky have a farewell tour around the league, or Mario Lemieux, or whoever, pick an athlete? The majority of us get told we're too old, too fat, too slow, too injured, get paid too much money, or whatever it is, or some combination of all of those, and some younger person that can come in that's willing to do the job for half the money, that's younger, that's faster, that is stronger, and you kind of go, well, that's just the next generation is coming into play, and I think Cody Fajardo fits that bill. So it's rare that you get a chance to write your own last
Henry
chapter
Burris
of
is
your
the only
career.
Guy I can think of off the top of my head. Henry Burris. Ricky Ray had an opportunity, and we saw how that ended.
Yeah,
Ronnie ended it when Ronnie wanted to end it. Not in the manner he wanted to do it in terms of finishing on a 4-win football team, but it was Ronnie's decision to retire. George Reed ended it on his own terms. Yeah. George Reed rushed for 1,454 yards in his final season, the third highest career total of his career. And on May 31st, 76, he said...
Yeah, but no one goes out winning a Grey Cup on their final game.
But did George win it on his or leave on his own terms, or did George say, my body's can't take too much more of this? Yeah, I still got 1,000 yards or whatever I got last season. Yeah. But, I've known George for a long time, and I remember playing racquetball with him thinking, boy, this is me playing racquetball with my hero. But, he couldn't move very good because his knees were just so torn up and beat up. So I just, very few people leave at the height of their career right after they've won a Stanley Cup or a Grey Cup or a Super Bowl or whatever, and they're still healthy enough to play, they're still young enough to play, and they say, no, I'm leaving at a high spot.
See, I look at this discussion and I wonder, I don't even know if you can make this Zach Collaros' decision. If you're Craig Dickinson, if you're Jeremy O'Day, and you've got to take into account not only the well-being of your football team, but of your players, do you want it on your conscience, and maybe you're presuming the worst-case scenario or guarding against it, do you want it on your conscience if, despite suppose that Zach Collaros is cleared to play, everything's fine, he goes out there, and then in a play or two or a game or two or a month or two, it happens again.
Well, it's going to happen
it's
again.
Bad.
It's going to happen again.
Maybe he lives a charmed existence. If he gets the protection that Cody Fajardo got against Toronto, he could play for another 20 years. But this is professional football. People are targeting the quarterback on every play. Chances are you're going to get that hit. If you're Craig Dickinson, if you're Jeremy O'Day, and if it happens again, do you want that on your conscience as a coach, as an employer? That's where I think the level at which the decision has to be made.
There's another factor. I mean, let's open up the horizon a little bit, and instead of looking at this year, let's look at this year and next year, which, by the way, happens to be a year where the Grey Cup's in Regina. Who do you think gives us the best chance of winning a Grey Cup next year? Is it Zach Collaros with his history of concussions, including one he's off on for right now, or is it this young upstart named Cody Fajardo that we're really encouraged and excited about after the last 2 games? Now, it's only 2 games, I agree, but who's our starting quarterback if the Riders are in the Grey Cup in 2020? Is it Fajardo or is it Collaros? And I think your chances are better. It's a year and a half. That gives him, what is it? That's almost 33 games or something like that between now and then. That's 33 games with Cody Fajardo getting better, and that's 33 games that Zach Collaros risks another concussion, maybe the final one.
You can look at this and you can say, then there's been a lot of comparisons, and there's been a lot of citing of precedent quarterbacks after their first 2 starts. You can look at Darian Durant, who threw for 688 yards in his first 2 starts with the Rough Riders. You can look at and won them. You can look at Kent Austin, who won his first 2 starts, performed impressively. You can also look at a former teammate of Marshall's, Joe 747 Adams, who threw for 355 yards and then 312, won his first 2 starts, and, well...
and nobody wanted to play for him.
You didn't have a book about him, did you?
He's been in the book, but if you look at it, you can have the Durant, Ken Austin story, or you can have the Joe 747 Adams story. How much do you have to inject caution into the discussion now, knowing that 2 games is a pretty limited sample size, and you possibly could have the Joe Adams great debut, but not much after that?
I agree it's a limited sample size, but I think you're not on purpose, but you haven't put all the facts into the scenario. Here's what I really like about the last 2 games for Cody Fajardo that we haven't talked about yet. Yeah, 800 some yards or whatever it is for 2 games. That's an impressive 400 yards per game average kind of thing. What's most impressive for me is 0 interceptions.
Yeah.
And when you watch the play and you watch the replays and stuff like that, as a former defensive back, when I'm covering you man to man, if you know where you're going and I don't, I have to follow you. My only chance of an interception is if I either guess what you're doing or I get a good break and the ball is thrown a little bit late and I get a chance to jump in front and make the interception. Well, Cody Fajardo is throwing the ball early. He's throwing the ball to the right guy, and he's throwing the ball on time. So as a defensive back, that's really hard for me to cover that because the receiver knows where he's going and I don't know where he's going. So Cody Fajardo is reading defenses, which is a huge plus. He's throwing the ball on time. He's getting good protection. I've talked enough about the offensive line. And he's making smart decisions, and he's got 0 interceptions. And the other one, and maybe this is even more important than the other 2, leadership. I love the mic'd up games. And in that game, there was one, I can't remember who he was throwing to. It might have been Kyron Moore, where they were, probably about the 15, 20-yard line, of Kyron Moore ran a corner route into the left side of the end zone, and Cody Fajardo overthrew him, and it would have been a touchdown. And when he came back to the huddle, you could hear it. It was a little bit faint, but you could hear him say to Kyron Moore, he says, "That was a touchdown. That was my fault. If I'd have hit you, that would have been good. It's on me," that kind of thing. And as a receiver, you're going, God, he didn't have to say that, but I sure appreciate the fact that he didn't, throw me out and say, well, you should have been there quicker, or how come you broke it off too soon, or whatever. He took ownership to that. And the second thing that I heard, and I was on the TSN broadcast, they were talking about how at halftime, when there was this 2-hour delay, Cody Fajardo was going around the locker room reminding them of the Super Bowl between the Ravens and the 49ers about 4 or 5 years back, where there was a similar delay. It was for some power outage on some of the lights. And then in that particular game, the Ravens were up fairly big. And after the long delay, the 49ers made this huge comeback. Now, the Ravens ultimately won that game, but he was reminding players, we cannot be complacent. We cannot, this happens. Momentum can switch when we come out after this long delay. So those are examples of leadership that separate him by miles or kilometers from Joe 747 Adams.
Or yards.
And that's
or meters.
Just the way he carries himself is impressive.
Yeah, he's a leader.
It belies his lack of experience as a starter. He's been around the CFL for a while, but you can see that he's probably watched Ricky Ray pretty carefully. He's watched Travis Lulay. Murray did a story on those influences on Cody Fajardo a few weeks back. And is this playing out in a manner that one would think, considering the people he's hung out with during the first 3 years of his CFL
I mentioned you. I kind of regret always adding he's only a backup quarterback, a third or short yardage quarterback to every sentence we've pretty well written about Cody.
Yeah, that made
Fajardo.
us look great, didn't it?
And he's really, but I think he is a leader, and it's pretty. And the guys are following him. I think they understand that he's their guy, and they have to follow him. They're not going to say anything. I don't know, and I never saw that kind of leadership as Zach. I don't think he's around long enough. Maybe it just didn't quite have that. Maybe it's not the type of guy he is. Like, do your quarterbacks have to be your leaders? Normally they do, don't they?
Well, I think they're naturally your leaders, whether they're a rah-rah guy like a Matt Dunnigan or whether they're a very quiet, unassuming guy like a Ricky Ray. Yeah. But people do look to their quarterbacks. And now, if their quarterbacks are quiet, they're still watching their demeanor. They're still watching how they act in the huddle. They're watching how they react after a good play. They're watching how they react after a bad play. They're watching everything you do. So whether you want to be a leader as a quarterback or not, you are a leader because everybody's watching you. But Cody Fajardo seems to be saying the right things. I love his attitude. I said this probably 3 or 4 weeks ago. I went to one of the games and I was watching him play, and I got, God, he just, his size and his demeanor on the field and sort of the enthusiasm. He reminded me of Matt Dunnigan.
He's bigger than Matt. I think he's 225, 6'2", 6'3", maybe even 6'4".
Yeah, well, I don't know how much Matt was back then, but Matt Dunnigan's always been a gym rat, with big guns, and but they're both shorter stature guys that just had a whole bunch of enthusiasm, like they were ADHD, and they just, okay, let me get out there. Where do I go? And, oh, you want me to tackle him? I'll go tackle him. So Matt Dunnigan was like a little linebacker in a quarterback's body. And Fajardo kind of looks the same to me.
You mentioned the interceptions, Marshall, and as any good former defensive back will do, or former quarterback too, the Regina Rams, the national champions. But Ken Austin's first start, he threw 2 picks in Hamilton. The following week, he threw a 45-yard pick 6 to Don Wilson of the Edmonton Eskimos. Darian's first start, he wasn't picked off in Hamilton, but the following week against Montreal, he was intercepted twice. You look at that Toronto game, and not only was Cody Fajardo not intercepted, I'm not sure the Toronto Argonauts laid a finger on the football all night.
No,
he just made the right reads and put receivers in a position where, in a lot of cases, where if they didn't catch the ball, nobody was going to touch it.
So let me give you a different perspective for a minute, or a sort of a different way of looking at the same thing. If I was a quarterback and I was being totally selfish, and I'm playing in my first start, and I wanted to have a game where I threw 0 interceptions because I know how much I'll be criticized if I throw an interception. I can throw the 5-yard outs. I can throw the hitch passes. I can dump off the screens. I can throw the little hitches inside. I can do all that kind of stuff. And, hey, Marshall finished with 0 interceptions. Well, Cody Fajardo's not doing that.
Yeah.
I mean, think of the balls. We've seen more deep balls thrown in the last 2 weeks by Cody Fajardo than we probably saw by Zach Collaros in the entire year last year. I mean, I sat on all the programs that I do talking about dink and dunk and, this boring offense. And I don't know whether that was McAdoo or whether that was Chris Jones with his thumbprint on McAdoo because he wanted his defense to win the games. I don't know that. But whether it's McAdoo or whether it's just Cody Fajardo or some combination of those two, I love the fact that they're throwing the ball deep. You can't just dink and dunk all the time. You got to put it in the mindset of the defensive backs that every once in a while we're going deep. So you better be prepared for that. And then if they start backing off to protect that, dink, dunk, till they come up, then boom, I'm going over top. And Cody Fajardo's, not only has he got 0 interceptions, he's got 0 interceptions, and he's thrown deep.
How much credit do the receivers get for this? I know he's throwing the ball, but this is a receiving core we had lots of questions about when training camp started. They were too young. They hadn't scored, Shock Evans, they hadn't scored a touchdown as a wide receiver. The slot backs were kind of there. Roosevelt was coming off and off. And we're wondering, what kind of receiving core are they going to have? And all of a sudden, I think this receiving core is playing so well. One of their big free agent signings, Manny Arsenault, I don't know how they get him on the roster. Because KD Cannon might be the only spot, but I don't know how you get Manny Arsenault on that roster right now.
No,
the way things are going.
Yeah, the luxury of just waiting until
someone gets hurt.
Until there's an injury. Yeah, yeah. I said that. I mean, somebody else. It wasn't me that said this, but I talk lots about how you win football games is by 2 things: making plays, not making mistakes. And one of the mistakes that receivers make, I mean, 2 of them is offsides and those kinds of things. I don't think they had any of those, but they had no drop balls. None of them dropped a ball that last game. So that's, hats off to the receiver. And I also said yesterday to somebody, I said, I don't think Manny Arsenault is going to see the field until there's an injury.
Right.
Why would you mess with it?
I wouldn't mess with it right now.
As I said, I was watching practice the other day and going, okay, well, you can't take Swerve off. You can't take Roosevelt off. You can't take Corey Watson off because he's a Canadian. And he's playing pretty well. Yeah. And then you got Cannon.
Roosevelt and Chuck Evans.
Yeah, what do you?
Yeah, so who do you? And none of them. You can't take any of them off, and you're going to put a guy on like Arsenault, who wants to play, and he's probably ready to play. Yeah. But I don't know what they're going to do with that.
But he's still. This is someone too who was hurt in September of last year. Not a full year as a lapse since the injury. So every week that you don't have to play him buys him another week of recuperative time too. So it benefits them from both standpoints.
And he's still leading in the locker room, and he's still leading on the field from the sideline, and there are going to be injuries. I mean, if we think that we're going to play with these same receivers for the entire year without an injury, we're kidding ourselves. There's going to be probably multiple injuries, and that's when you get Arsenault come in. And if Arsenault comes in and does really well, maybe he's in there for the rest of the year and somebody else has to sit. But the reality in this league, whether it's on the offensive line especially, or on the defensive line, or on the defensive backs, or the receivers, you got to have depth. And right now at receivers, I think we get pretty good depth.
They also have another, and it's on defense. What did they do with Solomon Aluminium if he's able to come back? He's another guy they rested a week when he was ready. But the defense is coming off arguably its best game,
Yep.
even maybe better than some games they played under Chris Jones. They did everything right. I don't remember a mistake. They got pressure on the quarterbacks. They had great coverage. They had 2 picks, 4 sacks. Charleston Hughes looks like he's found a fountain of youth. So how do you say, okay, well, Solomon, you're going to go in the middle, and we're going to put Cameron Judge as weak, and we're going to leave Derek Moncrief as Sam because you can't move him anywhere. So what do they do with a couple of vets? So maybe other questions. What are they going to do with these guys? And they're all being answered in a positive way that I think most of us didn't think would happen this way.
Everything we're talking about is good problems, not bad problems. It's good problems.
Yeah.
What are we going to do with this guy that's waiting in the wings? What are we going to do with that guy that's waiting in the wings? Those are really nice problems as opposed to so-and-so just got hurt. Who's going to go in now?
Exactly.
And that's sort of what we're used to. So nice problems to have if you're Jeremy O'Day or Craig Dickinson.
Has Craig Dickinson liberated Stephen McAdoo? That's one question that's percolating. And you alluded to it previously, Marshall. And I should point out that in 2017, the Riders led the league in touchdown passes when Chris Jones was the head coach and when Stephen McAdoo was the offensive coordinator. So it's not like there wasn't some productivity on offense with Stephen McAdoo here, but you look at last year and the restrictive schemes that they had, even when Zach Collaros was in the game, and now you watch what's happening now. I just wonder if Craig Dickinson has given Stephen McAdoo the latitude that perhaps he didn't enjoy when Chris Jones was here, particularly last year.
Yeah, I wish I knew whether McAdoo had latitude last year or not. I don't know that. I'm not a Chris Jones fan. Anybody that's kind of watched,
you guys,
anybody that's watched In the Huddle over the last couple of years knows that I'm not a Chris Jones fan. But I just think that Craig Dickinson, from what I can glean through interviews and so on, I haven't met the man yet, but I just think that he's the type of leader that empowers the people underneath him. He says, you're the defense coordinator, not me. You're the offense coordinator, not me. I want you to do the best job you can. I want you to do the best job. Let me know what I can do to help you. I'm going to hold you accountable, but I'm not going to tell you how to do your job. I hired you to do that job. And I think McAdoo, if he wasn't before, I don't know, but I think now he is empowered. And I think McAdoo is saying, oh, good. I don't have to worry about that sort of pressure that I had previously from Chris Jones. And now I can run my game plan. And then, oh, look, I got this young, energetic quarterback that likes to go down the field and seems to be making smart decisions. So let's open up the playbook and have some fun. So I think he is empowered now to run his offense that he wasn't able to under Chris Jones. Chris Jones, I mean, again, I'm being ultra critical of a guy that's already gone, but I think if the Riders had 100 eggs in their basket to spread out between all of the players on their team, they put 75% of those eggs on the defensive side of the ball. They said, we're going to win with sacks, we're going to win with pressures, we're going to win with interceptions for touchdowns, we're going to win with fumble recoveries for touchdowns, we're going to win with defense. And on the offense, they're kind of going, well, geez, anybody going to don't you going to give us any eggs? Don't we get any eggs over here? And I think that's probably a factor why we didn't get, some of these high-priced quarterbacks wanting to come to the Saskatchewan-roughriders, because our history has been we're going to spend all of our money on defense. Well, are you going to spend any money protecting me? Are you going to give me receivers to throw to? Are you going to give me a running back to hand off to? So I think that will change over time, but that's the reputation that Chris Jones had. And I think now McAdoo's saying, all right, it's my game plan. I got a quarterback that can run it. Let's go.
Plus, he has a running back. He has a very good running back in William Powell. And Marcus Thigpen is okay, but he's no William Powell. I keep looking up and going, there's William Powell going again. What a run that is. That's 8 yards, man. That was 8 yards of speed and power. And he has this amazing ability to cut. Vision. Vision. It's just to go, wow. And you just watch him. You could watch. I love watching Andrew Harris run the ball. I think he's one of the best running backs. I'm quickly falling in love with watching William Powell take over a game at running back. And they did that in the second half after the storm. They kind of just sort of focused. They didn't really try to run at the score or anything. But William Powell. So they have a running back that takes all the heat off the quarterbacks, which is providing that kind of excitement. And I'd like to see one game. I don't know how many carries they had. How many carries they have yesterday? Do you remember, Rob?
15-ish. He
gets around 20, and he just gets bigger and stronger and tougher. And what a great signing that was. Let's give some more credit to Jeremy O'Day, first seeing the site to get for Fajardo, and then get to William Powell, and then we won't bring up Micah Johnson yet. We'll still adapt.
Micah Johnson had a tremendous game against Toronto. I rewatched the game about 4 a.m. on Tuesday.
I think I was just going to bed then.
And Micah Johnson was an absolute terror. The interception by Nick Marshall. Nick Marshall, actually, S.J. Green had a step or two on Nick Marshall.
What happened? Underthrown.
Micah Johnson forced the pass to be thrown before the quarterback wanted to. He couldn't step into the throw. Pass was underthrown. That interception is a Micah Johnson production as much as it is a Nick Marshall production.
There's no coincidence that he's got Charleston Hughes is reliving his youth right beside him. So that's got to change a whole lot.
And I think, and I said this before the season even started, I said, good pressure up the middle from Micah Johnson is going to make the job of guys like Charleston Hughes easier, because he's going to take the double teams and Charleston Hughes is going to come off the edge, unless they're going to chip with a running back, which takes a guy out of the receiving. Charlton Hughes is going to have a good year. And I think now Charlton Hughes is starting to have a really good year, they're going to start to say, well, we got to start doubling there. And then you're going to see Micah Johnson coming right up the middle and either getting sacks or he's going to cause interceptions to happen at the back end, like the one you talked about. I've
never seen a defensive tackle like that.
Yeah.
He's tall and he's big. He's like 280, but he's lean.
And he's quick.
Quick. Like he's like
Ed McQuarters, number 61.
Yeah.
That's going back a long time.
When he had two eyes or when he had one?
Even with one eye.
Yeah.
Man.
That was a great signing. I guess so we'll have to do that. But
back to William Powell for a second. I likened him earlier in the year to a guy that's well known throughout the NFL, and that's Le'Veon Bell.
Yes.
Le'Veon Bell,
but he was bigger.
He gets the ball and then he just sort of pauses and he looks at the backs of his offensive linemen and he goes, okay, I know where the hole's supposed to be, but it's not right there yet. So I'm just going to wait here until you guys move those guys out of the way, and then I'm going to go find that hole. And offensive linemen love playing for guys like that. He said, just let us create the holes. Don't handicap us to say that it has to always be pushed that way. Just give me a chance to put this guy on roller skates and push him wherever way I want. And you talked about 15 carries versus 20 carries. The difference between 15 carries and 20 carries is those last 5. You got a defensive line that's getting pooped, and the offensive linemen are just going, okay, let's keep running the ball because I got these guys tired, and it's just like they're on rollerblades, and we just get to keep pushing back. And you got a guy like William Powell with great vision just saying, all right, I'll follow you guys. Where do you want us to go?
And there was also a play. Cody Fajardo looked like he was audibling on the play where they lined up. The Argos were clearly in man coverage. And there was William Powell, I think, second from the left. Ian Wild, a linebacker, opposite him.
Did a quick in.
Yep. And they ended up on the 1 yard line scoring a touchdown. Yep. So not only is he a factor with running the ball, but he's a very good receiver.
Yep.
You can run him on plays like that. And that's also speaks to Cody Fajardo and being able to manage the game. I believe the touchdown pass to Kyran Moore was on an audible as well. So he's doing some things that at this stage of his career, at least as a starting quarterback, you wouldn't necessarily think that many quarterbacks would be doing. Is that fair?
Well, I think, and you said it already in the program, that's the impact of Ricky Ray and Travis Luley. You sit behind those guys. You sit behind those guys in games. You sit behind those guys in practice, but you also sit with those guys in the film room. And for those of us that have been in dressing rooms watching film over and over and over and over again, you watch the same play over and then you go, see how that guy's lined up? Watch him here and watch him here. Watch him when he's in man, watch him when he's in zone. And you kind of go, okay, this guy tips off the coverage every single time. So as a quarterback, I don't make it obvious. I don't come out and go, I want to see what that guy's doing. But, you just peek out the corner of your eye and you go, okay, I know it's man-to-man coverage. And, hey, Powell, you go out to this side here, quick in, and there you go. So quarterback, and Ricky Ray would notice that, and Cody Fajardo would go, oh, I would have never noticed that. Thanks for teaching me that. And Travis Luley, same thing. So he's learned things in the film room that are so important from guys like that. And I'm sure he's learning things from McAdoo and his coaches, but there's just nothing like learning from Hall of Famers like those two guys.
Well, maybe we can move on. Calgary this weekend. Bo Levi Mitchell looks a little bit in doubt. I would say probably pretty much in doubt, considering he's got an MRI.
They're looking for a second opinion now.
They're going for a second opinion, so he's not going to be able to practice.
He's not playing this week. I don't know that for a fact.
He hasn't missed a game since 2014, so I wouldn't exactly bet against him, but I think the signs point, and especially when Nick Arbuckle came on to play in the second.
They've got to be careful with their investment.
If I'm Dave Dickinson, there's no way I'm playing him in this game. It's not that it's a meaningless game. It's an important game. But if I'm Dave Dickinson, I'm saying, well, there's no way I'm not making the playoffs this year. So I want to make sure that I go into the playoffs hot. I want to make sure I go into the playoffs healthy. And Bo Levi Mitchell playing game. This is, I think, their third game of the year. Yeah. Bo Levi playing the third game of the year is not nearly as important to me as him playing the 18th game.
And it looks like a weird injury too, because people were talking shoulder, but he was also holding his pec. So something, and it kind of happened. I don't quite remember. That was later in the game, but so if Cody Fajardo comes out and plays the same way he did on Monday, they should be able to beat the Stampeders, or does he have to find a way to get 500 yards out of that arm to beat the Stampeders, who are still the defending Grey Cup champs in name only, because I think there's only, 10 guys left from that team that won the Grey Cup last year?
I think if you look at the quarterbacks, I say Fajardo against Arbuckle's the wash. You look at the offensive line versus offensive line, I think Saskatchewan's got an advantage. You look at the defense. This is where the game was going to be won by Saskatchewan, in my opinion. The Saskatchewan defense is trending better. Calgary's defense is trending poorer. Calgary's defense doesn't have an identity yet because they lost so many people. Saskatchewan's defense on paper is fantastic. They didn't play well in the first 2 weeks, the first week especially, well, even the second week. I think this game, we've got the Calgary Stampeders at the absolute right time because Bo Levi Mitchell's not playing, and Saskatchewan's defense is getting hot, and Cody Fajardo is getting more and more confidence. So I think Saskatchewan will win this one.
We've taken up far too much of Marshall's time when he could be golfing or pickleballing or whatever. Any final thoughts before we
maybe everyone should just take a little chill pill about Gaynor. I believe in following Marshall's advice. Patience, patience, patience. But fix those darned eyes.
Yep.
Because somehow bring the eyes back and just enjoy the fact that some guy lost a little weight, and maybe we should all embrace that.
Marshall, anything you'd like to add before we close?
Well, Gaynor's not out there in a trench coat with syringes under one side and pipes under the other. Let's give Gaynor an opportunity to show what he can do. And, back to the football field, let's give this defense a chance to show what they can do on paper. They're a fantastic defense with a great reputation. And Cody Fajardo, let's not pencil ourselves in for the Grey Cup yet, but let's look at this is a good young guy playing his first year as a starter. And every great quarterback in the CFL, every great quarterback that's in the Hall of Fame right now had those first couple of starts, and Cody's off to a good start.
Awesome. Marshall, thank you so much for joining us today. Murray, I got to read this thing. If you enjoy the podcast, A, thank you, and B, please leave a review and a rating. It helps us a lot. You can subscribe to the show on the Apple Podcasts app or wherever you get your podcasts. If you'd like to send us a question, you can email me, Rob, at rvanstone@postmedia.com, and we'll read it on the show. You can follow Rob on Twitter @RobVanstone and Murray at MurrayLP. Marshall, thanks again. Murray, thank you. I'm Rob Vanstone. We'll do this again next week with number 58. Take care.